people think it has to be this solo sojourn where you're on your own and it's, it's you slaying dragons. But I think if you can find, if not a business partner, some kind of like peer group. Nice.
So since this is the first time both of us are meeting each other, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of let us know what you're about and what it is you do.
Yeah, so I go by the moniker Vernon Maxxwell. I do a daily podcast called Famous Quotes from Famous People. Basically, it's a little bit of inspiration, a little motivation. I tell everyone we're jumping on the inspiration train. We're heading down to Motivation Town. In 5 minutes or less, 7 days a week, I give you what you need to get for you to get to where you got to go.
I like it. So what? How long you been doing this?
January 5th will be 1 year.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of quotes.
It's a lot of quotes, man, but a lot of it's curated, so it's a cool, I'm not having to generate new ideas every day, right? I'm using what's out there already, because there's already a lot of content out there, right? There's already a lot of people doing great stuff. So I'm kind of a curator in that regard.
Okay. So what got you started on this path? Because I like it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you asked, Michael. It's so this isn't my first podcast. This is actually probably like my third show that I've actually launched. I've always wanted to do a daily podcast, but I never could crack the code, if you will. So when I was growing up as a kid, I played sports, and in high school I had quotes on my mirror. So I would wake up, wash my face, brush my teeth, and I would get my inspiration from these quotes by guys like Mean Joe Green, right? Like old school football players. And so one day, a while back, it hit me. I was like, well, I always had this idea to do something around quotes. And because they've been an inspiration. I feel like quotes are bite-sized wisdom that people that are successful kind of hand down to you, right? So through books, through interviews, through podcasts, it's just another way for people to consume wisdom from those who came before them. And with the way like technology has evolved and communication, and we have so little time to consume now, quotes are kind of like that bite-sized format that you can consume, and it can give you a little bit of what you need, right? Maybe it's motivation. Maybe you had a hard breakup. Maybe you're going through tough times and you just need that little saying from your mentor or your virtual mentor, the person out there in the world, to inspire you, and you can get that in the form of a quote.
Yep. No, I agree. Sorry about that. I was just changing settings on the phone. Just had to make sure everything was set up properly. No, I like it a lot. So one thing I used to do was there's a book I used to read. I can't remember what it's called, but it was a quote book from, I want to say either 1920s or 1940s, called It Can Be Done. And it was like quotes and poems that were all supposed to be like inspirational.
Right.
And I would like read that every day, and then I would talk about what that quote or poem meant to me. Things happened. My morning routine went completely to shit. And that stopped. But on days that does happen, my day is definitely much more productive and successful. And I sleep easier at night knowing that I had a more productive day there. So I definitely understand what you mean with the quotes and the daily practices and everything.
Do you still have that book by any chance?
Yeah, so I actually have the original first edition copy. And then I bought a second version, which is the newer edition, so that way I didn't have to keep on opening and closing that one. Out of fear that I would destroy the original print.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I do still have them.
That's cool, man. I love that.
So you said this is your third show.
Yeah.
What were the other two about then?
So the first show I did back in 2013, it was called Live by the Beat. And I was going to interview all the famous DJs in the world. And and I was going to create like a digital product around that, right? Like a
Okay.
DJ course. I got like 3 episodes in, and then it never even saw the light of day. The next one I did was really fun. It was called Event Supremacy. That was really cool because I had been in the events space industry for about like a year and a half when I launched that podcast, and I got to interview some amazing people that were doing events all around the world. And it wasn't your traditional boring conference. These were, like entrepreneur masterminds. I interviewed people who had put together big sponsorship deals, like Lisa Yukman. I sat down with Ben. She was the founder, or not the founder. She was like the event coordinator of a thing called Mind Valley. They had these retreats that they were doing. It was really kind of cool. And then just interesting entrepreneurs who are putting together masterminds. These guys that do this thing called the TMBA podcast. They have this this thing that they do every year in Bangkok, Thailand. So it's a big gathering of big entrepreneurs and online marketers. And I parlayed that into a podcasting services business because I realized that people wanted podcasts, but they didn't have the time to actually do it. And then I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So
And then Anchor did it for you. So
yeah,
the
so
service is still there.
yeah, Anchor is like the game changer, like that's
Yeah.
how we met. Great community, by the way. Shout out to Anchor.
Oh, and absolutely. There's nothing like the Anchor community that I've ever interacted with before. So I definitely agree. Now, have you always been entrepreneurial, or was that something you became more acquainted with as time went on? Like starting a podcast and trying to evolve a digital product, whether it came to fruition or not. Like that's not just something someone sits around and is like, "Oh, I'm just going to do this today." Like, where does those tendencies come from?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Michael. And I think it it kind of blossomed from discontent, right? So
Okay.
I started working my first job, I think when I was like 15. Excuse me. I didn't even have a car. I'd bike to work. And I realized very quickly that people weren't going to ever pay me for what I was actually worth.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of that is that I really felt like in the jobs that I had, I wasn't treated fairly. I was treated poorly. And that kind of inspired me to say, hey, well, what if I actually started my own lemonade stand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically, what if I struck out on my own and did my own thing? How much more could I make? Would it be a different experience? Would I be able to create my own hours? So I think it started very on out of discontent, and it evolved to, how can I create something that'll allow me to live this lifestyle where I can live the way I want, right? And not have to answer to anyone, and not have to clock in or punch a clock or answer to someone. I could travel, I could see the world. I could do all these things that I really wanted to do, but I never had the opportunity. So that was kind of the evolution, I think, of the entrepreneurial spirit.
Then what was the first step into your own then that kind of manifested into?
Excuse me.
No dying on the show. We didn't sign the no death waiver. No dying on the show.
No death waivers. So are you asking me? I just want to make sure I have this. Are you asking me like what was
Yeah.
the first business I started, or what was?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first business or gig or contract or whatever it was that was entrepreneurship the first time for you.
Yeah, I think even before I got into this digital space, it was when I was in high school. My coach had a preschool, and he needed lawn maintenance and lawn care. So a good friend of mine back us like 40-50 bucks for us to spend an hour or two pulling out the weeds around your preschool. And he was like, yeah. And then another friend of mine, Reed Bowman, he had like a pressure washing machine.
Okay.
So we'd link up with him, and we join his crew. So not necessarily that it was like our business per se in that regard, but it was kind of like we realized that, oh, we can have this side hustle and we can make
Yeah.
money to buy some beer on the weekends and some CDs and some movie tickets, you know?
Yeah. And well, it's probably the difference too between making a commission and then making a wage, right? Like a wage, you're locked in, no matter what you do. To where a commission, you can up the rate if the job's bigger.
Right.
And I think that's really important for people to understand the difference, because even if you're working for somebody else, but you get to decide the price that you work and the amount of effort that's expended for that price, like it's a completely different interaction for both parties.
Oh yeah, and I think that we've gotten to a point where entrepreneurship just makes sense, right? You look at
Yes.
you know, families, you know, it's hard for families to have two you know, the wife and the husband both working. Like who's going to raise the kids, right? So it's almost like entrepreneurship is evolving in out of a necessity for us to be able to raise our families and be there. Maybe you have a loved one that's sick, or maybe you have you know, in these cases where it's so easy to travel, you have a spouse that's in another country and they can't get residency in the United States. Well, if that's your, you know, your the cards or the hand you've been dealt, you have to figure out a way to make money, maybe where you're not necessarily specific to a geographic location. So I think it's kind of almost evolved, Michael, out of a necessity for the things that we desire in our lives.
No, I agree with that completely too. Because the one thing that I've been kind of seeing transition is employment doesn't work on its own. Like it's really hard for companies in today's day and age to pay you enough to provide a lifestyle and provide for your means, let alone for you to be able to do the things that you want in life. So like having a side hustle, if you want to call it that, or some
Yeah.
sort of intentional um, intentional profit gains outside of employment is really necessary if you're going to live a happy lifestyle. It's just employment's not at a place where it's working well in this country anymore. And I don't remember too many origin stories I've heard of families either who are talking about, oh, my family immigrated here in the 20s and then they went and got a day job. It's
Right.
always they immigrated here and then they started a business.
Right.
And like the whole, we're all supposed to have day jobs. I don't know where that came from in our history, but it just kind of seems not what it should have been, you know?
Right. It's a very outdated, you know, industrial revolutionary times
Yeah.
mindset, right? Even the idea
Yeah.
of the 9 to 5, right? Like, even if you have a 9 to 5 and you go to work, how many of those hours from 9 to 5 are you actually spending doing really high end productive work, right? Like your output is actually creating something that is valuable, right? Most people are, there's this thing now called ghosting. Have you heard of this thing? It's like,
Yeah, I think so.
it's like people like pretend they're in their office, but they're not, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I would say maybe of you know, those 8 hours that you spend at work, you know, like maybe there's maybe 5. That's a stretch. That's actually really productive time that you're really creating value, right? And the other time you're at the water cooler, at the lunch break. So I think even that's going to have to change at some point too, right?
Well, so that's crazy that you even bring it up that way, because one of the guests earlier is a teacher or professor. I can't remember what age group and level he teaches at, in Korea. And he works 14 hours a week.
That's great.
Like 14-hour work week.
He probably has a great life too, right? A great life outside of
but like if
work.
other countries can do it, why can't we do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all about like family being important and employers not paying you to do nothing. Because I don't know how many people I talk to that text me like, "Hey, what's up?" I'm like, "Nothing. What you doing?" I'm just chilling at work.
I'm at work.
Like,
I'm at work. What do you mean you're at work? You're supposed to be like working. You know?
right.
So
Yeah,
I get that.
So that's really funny. So once you start venturing out on your own and doing your own thing, what what lessons did you learn right away that kind of either surprised you or maybe knocked you back on your butt a little bit and you had to dust yourself off and like, oh crap, this isn't quite what I was taught how to deal with?
It's a great question. I think kind of like moving in the evolution. One of the things I did when I was in college is I started an entertainment company, and one of the things I think I realized early on was that it was on me, like it was on my shoulders, right? So no one was gonna, like, I had to go out and eat what I killed, right? No one was gonna help me get my books that semester. If I didn't have them, if there wasn't any excess money from any Pell Grants or any things like that I had. So I literally had to, it's great motivation when it's on your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was younger, I had this drive that, I really appreciated it being on my shoulders. I like the kind of coming from like a football background, right? Like it's fourth quarter, you're on the 1 yard line. You got to punch it in to win the game. If you don't cross that goal line, it's over, right? So
Yep.
I appreciated that weight, right? Like I was able to carry that. And I think the lesson that what a lot of people don't tell you, that entrepreneurship is tough. It's hard. It's not easy.
The problem is it's fourth quarter every quarter,
Yeah,
and there is no locker room at the end of the game. There's
right.
the first quarter again.
Every day, and I would say, like, looking back, I wish I would have gotten, asked for help sooner, right? Like I think people think it has to be this solo sojourn where you're on your own and it's you slaying dragons. But I think if you can find, if not a business partner, some kind of like peer group that you can plug into to kind of help you along the way, because there's going to be the inevitable down spirals, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's essential to kind of keeping you sane. Yeah.
Now, did you have that starting off? Like,
No.
you had support of friends, family, everybody look at you like
No.
you're dumb and say, go back and get that day job?
Well, I always, I remember when I started my entertainment company, a friend of mine who wasn't a friend much longer after that said, why would you do that? Why would you go start why would you go, what makes you, now I quote you, he said this, he said, what makes you think that you can do something like that? And I said, well, I'm gonna show you that I can do something like that. So I went to Vistaprint, got my business cards. The
first step of every business.
The first step.
I'm legit. I have business cards.
You're not legit unless you have Vistaprint business cards, right? It's not official until you can put a card in someone's hand and say, "Call me."
What do? I haven't figured that out yet, but call me.
I don't know what I sell. I don't know my prices, but I got business cards, right? So, I got some pushback from my friends, and I quickly realized who was on the team at that point, right? They weren't a part of the team. If they weren't there to support me and to lift me up, then why do I don't, that's not a relationship that I need, right? So that person got cut off. I think my family has always been supportive. I was only the second person in my immediate family to get a degree. So I think there was some push for me to go the safe route, right? Like get a degree, you're going to have a good job. And I had to realize that was based on my mom's experience, right? Excuse me. Cause she never she's in school now, and she's actually went back to school when she was like 60, when she turned 57. She's now pursuing
her, man.
Yeah, it's great, amazing woman, right? But so she was almost pushing her dream on me, right? Like go to school, get a job. And if you're not self-aware of these things that are happening, you can think, oh man, like I have to do that. I have to go that route. But I was smart enough to realize that it was a decision that I was going to have to make on my own. And I did graduate. I did get a job out of college eventually, but I realized that that really wasn't going to be the route that I wanted to take. So entrepreneurship.
So,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I said, so entrepreneurship has always kind of been the thing, like even if there's been times where I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, oh, like it's been this glorious journey, right? There's been times where I had to go back and get a side, like go work part-time at a place, right? Or figure out a way to hustle and make some money on the side, whether it be pawning stuff or putting stuff on Craigslist. I always found a way to eat, right? But at the end of the day, I think once you kind of experience that freedom and you kind of see that world from a different light, it's hard to really go back and say, this is, I'm going to be a full-time employee for somebody for the rest of my life. Even if you do it for a year to sock some cash away. I think that discontent, started to come up. It's like, hey, well, you can do this and you can play by somebody else's rules, or you can go out and create your own thing and live by your rules.
Right. So what are you excited for going into 2019? You got any big projects planned? Any big things new coming?
Yeah, man, I'm excited to dig deeper into the podcast. We're at 78 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So I'm excited to just really dig deeper in that. I think this year was kind of like a phase of kind of just figuring out, how is it going to work? Will it work? Do people care? Does it matter? Right? Does it add value? And now I just want to go deeper on that. Just invested in some video equipment, going to be bringing on a video team to do some stuff outside of just some ancillary stuff around just audio, adding video. I'm just excited. I'm excited to really dig into that because podcasting has been something I've been doing for nearly 5 years now. And I'm just ready to just dig deeper into this show, man, and just make it have more impact. So,
no, that's really cool. So, this was a really fast 20 plus minutes already. Holy crap! Where can people find you online?
Yeah, absolutely great question. So, Vernon Maxxwell is my handles on Twitter and IG. It's MAXXWell. And if you want to just kind of see what I'm up to, you can go to my site. It's vernonmaxwell.com.
All right, perfect, man. Well, I'll make sure whenever I do the post edits on all this that all the links and everything are in there, so that way it's easy for people to get a hold of you. Like I said, I really appreciate you coming on here last minute and kind of telling us what you got going on and sharing a little bit about your story here. It's been really fun to have you a part of this year's experience.
Yeah, man, it's cool.
I'm sure we're going to stay in touch after this for sure.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be a part of the marathon this year. Hope you keep it up, man. And I want to see it again next year. To anybody out there listening, make sure you guys continue to support this project. It means a lot to the Anchor community. It means a lot to Michael and the listeners. And hopefully I'm back next year, man.
Absolutely. Well, all right, man. Well, I'll be talking to you soon.
All right, cheers.